the sound.
Down as the rolling sea.
I like this part right here. Come on.
Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on
Let us march on.
till victory is won.
Now we add a little something to it. Just to encourage you. We're going to take you to church later. Let's go.
We'll keep marching right until the victory is won.
To all my brothers out there.
Hold your head up, brother, till the victory is won.
To all my sisters in the struggle.
Keep believing, sister, till the victory is won.
Till that day.
Till that day comes,
Hey.
let us march on
To victory.
till victory is won. Is won.
Well, there we go. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Second Baptist Church Black History Month Empowerment Series, week number 3. We've made it through 3 weeks, and we are here for our final session, but certainly not our least important, and I'm excited that you're with us. My name is Pastor Todd Johnson. To all of you who are watching, if you're not familiar, if you're from the area, you probably are. But would you do me a favor, and I'll ask you several times throughout the day, if you would like and share or tag somebody who could benefit from this conversation. And if you want to know what the conversation is about today, the conversation is about employment, careers, jobs, next generation careers and jobs that are here in the Valley, coming to the Mahoning Valley, that can be a benefit not only to our young people, but our old people. Whether you're a college grad, recent high school graduate, or an individual who needs to just change careers, get a good gainful income for you and your family, that's what we're talking here. And I'm going to give my little speech, my little sermon before we get started, because you know preachers got to preach. It is incumbent upon us, particularly as a black community, to take advantage of every opportunity we can to uplift ourselves, and doing so in a way that leaves for generations a legacy, the legacy that we know here in the Warren area, in the Mahoning Valley, of hard work, putting your head down, doing what you need to do so that you can raise a family. And we come from that legacy. This church is in one of those neighborhoods. It was a blue-collar neighborhood. I remember growing up right over on 2nd Street with my grandparents, and my grandfather working at the mill. My mother and father worked at Delphi or Packard Electric. And there's a lot of talk, I'm a part of it, I'm a lifer here, of how the jobs have gone away and things have shifted. But there is so much transition happening and so many opportunities available. And it would be a shame on us if we let those opportunities come and go without our community taking part in them. So that's my vision and my goal for this session. If you haven't checked out the previous ones, please check out week 1, where we talked special education and learning barriers for children, particularly African-American children. We had dynamic, brilliant young ladies who were sharing with us how to navigate the process, how to know your rights, how to advocate for your children, and work with the school systems and our local schools to get the best educational resources for your children, especially if they have barriers. Last week, we talked life insurance. And Lord, if you still don't have life insurance by now, we got a problem. I want every family, especially every black family, to be insured, including our young people, our young couples, our teenagers, our children. As much as we don't like to think about it, it is a necessary endeavor for us to make sure we have it, to not only protect ourselves and be able to take advantage of last expenses and do what we need to do, but also to create generational wealth and set our future generations up on a solid foundation. So this week we're talking next generation careers, and I am excited for our guests that we have. One of them you see beside me, and he's quite the familiar face if you're from the Warren area, so you already know my first guest, and his name is Mr. Tim Callion. Mr. Tim Callion has worked in the trades for many years. Pipe fitting. Is it pipe fitting? Yeah. And he's been involved with unions and trades and skilled trades and various organizations in our community and partnering to try to recruit and encourage young men and young ladies into these careers. And these careers, skilled trades, are good paying, wonderful paying careers, and we're seeing a drop-off, particularly in the African-American community, a severe drop-off, and he's going to be talking with us about that. Our second and third, I'll just put them together, are Dominick Brown and Vernon Mills, who are from Ultium Cells. And they are both representing this new employer in the area in Lordstown, where we're going from old gas and combustion engines to electric vehicles and new technologies, and Ultium Cells are going to be a part of that, and they're going to be a major part of that as a supplier for GM and other entities and companies that are making these electric vehicles. So again, tune in, tap in, tag somebody. If you can see or hear me, say hey so I can see some comments pop up on the screen. Share this on your page. Share this with groups that you're in. Let people know that we are talking live. If they don't tap in live, they can watch the replay later. But we want as many faces, as many eyeballs, and as many ears to hear this information today and to get what they need so that they can move their families forward. So thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. And we're just going to have a conversation. We're just going to chat up and talk a little bit about what's happening in your particular job spaces and how members of our community can take advantage of them, be a part of them, and maybe even, especially for our Ultium representatives, they're both shift leaders, by the way, from Ultium Cells, just talk about what the company is endeavoring to do in this area. I'm going to start with Mr. Callion. Tell us a little bit about your journey in skilled trades, the short version, the brief version, and a little bit about the needs that you're seeing out there and the opportunities that you're seeing out there. So we're going to hear from Mr. Callion first. You want to hold that up?
All right. Thank you, Pastor Johnson. My brief journey would be I'm a 33-year member of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, Local 396. Throughout that time period, I spent 21 years working in the field as a plumber and a pipe fitter. Got involved with the political side of things through our union, worked my way up as a member of the executive board, later became the vice president for our local. I was encouraged by some of our members to run for some of the other offices, and I ran for business agent, was elected to that, and then later found myself being the business manager of the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters. But throughout that time period, worked with many different people throughout the area, people from all over the country. One thing about what we do, once you go through your apprenticeship program, you're considered a journey person. And what that means is sometimes you will be traveling, and it depends on where the work is. We were fortunate enough that we do have a lot of projects that bring other people to this area, such as the Ultium project. There's building trades people working on the building of that site out there, and it's fantastic. I've driven by, didn't have the opportunity to be a part of it once the construction really got going. I retired 2 years ago, but I have driven by because of my curiosity. And it's awesome seeing that thing going up, and would have loved to have had the opportunity to stick around a few more years just to be a part of that project too. But there's a big need for the trades, and there seems to be a falling away of people, young people, who want to do that type of work. At one time, I used to say that the trades were the best kept secret in the Mahoney Valley, because you didn't really know about it unless you had a family member who worked at the trades, or a friend or something, and they would definitely look to try and get the people they knew into the trades, but it's not quite like that anymore like it used to be. Everyone's having shortages, so the opportunities abound and are plentiful. You want me to go into?
Yeah. What are some of the areas of skilled trades, just to give, just a
Well, let me discuss, just say what some of the trades are. A lot of people don't know. Boiler makers, bricklayers, tile setters, carpenters, laborers, millwrights, operating engineers, painters, plumbers, pipe fitters, as I mentioned about myself, roofers, cement masons, electricians, elevator construction people. A lot of people don't realize that's part of the skilled trades, but that's an excellent job. Sheet metal workers, sprinkler fitters. Most buildings now are required to have sprinkler systems in. Sprinkler fitters are kind of part of the pipe fitters, but they're a whole separate group. We don't kind of intermingle what we do. And then structural iron workers and the Teamsters, who do a lot of the driving of the equipment, trucks and what have you. But if a person isn't really centered on just doing one thing, there's so many different opportunities that our young people need to be aware of in the trades.
Now, you said that young people don't tend to be gravitating towards that. Is it because it's labor intensive and people have, and maybe you can dispel if that's a little bit overblown, because I think people think hard, dirty work, and I'm not saying it won't be, and it may be in many cases, but can you talk a little bit about that and maybe the worth of it? Yeah, it's hard, but it's definitely worth it. Can you talk a little bit about the how hard the work is?
It is hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It requires what I think a special individual, because you go from very extreme working conditions, from working out in 90-degree weather to working out when it's 15 degrees. If you're doing industrial work, sometimes you're going to be in areas where you have to go inside of furnaces. When the mills were, really functioning in this area, we would have monthly shutdowns in the mills, have to go in and repair some of the piping in these furnaces that make steel. Well, because of the time schedule and the mill can't stay shut down too long, they would shut the furnace down, cool it down for a little bit, but by the time we'd go in, it'd still be over 100 degrees, 150 degrees sometimes, and you would only work at maybe 15, 20-minute intervals and have to be relieved, go out, get Gatorade or something, and work shifts that way. But yeah, it can be tough, but the benefits are great. Benefits are great. All the trades have excellent wage benefits. They have retirement. We fund our own pension plans, which means that you're not hoping the company stays in business. We're all self-funded, meaning that the employees put money contributions hourly into their pension plans, and then we are monitored by a combined unit of the contractors have representatives that sit as a trustee, as well as the labor side. They are trustees as well. So we do the right things that need to be done to make sure that the pensions are stable for the future of the people that are working and to sustain the retirees like myself. We have our own health care that we look out after too, and we have, once again, trustees on both sides that monitor those funds to make sure that we have enough money to pay the fees that come up through health care and whatever else arises out of that.
You say good wages, and I know this goes through like an apprenticeship process, which includes on-the-job training and classroom time.
Right.
But they're being paid
Yes.
during that time.
Right.
Now, it fluctuates between different trades, or is it a set thing for all of them? And what is it roundabout?
Each trade has their own structure. Some apprenticeship programs are 4 years, some are 5. but apprentices normally will start off somewhere in the mid-teens nowadays. And then each, like Pastor said, you work during the day. Usually, sometimes you might be on a second shift. And then, like with the plumbers and pipe fitters, our apprentices go to school 2 nights a week. And that all of our training was done locally in Boardman, Ohio. But some of the trades are different. Some do their training in Cleveland, some down in Columbus. And the way they set those up, you'll work and then you might be laid off for a week so that you can go to school, and then you come back from your schooling and you go back to the employer that you're working with. It just depends on the trade. The median range, like I said, they start off around in the mid-teens, and each year you graduate to a higher percentage. By the time you top out of your 4 or 5 year program, you're anywhere varying from $29 an hour on up to $37 an hour.
Wow.
Here in the Mahoney Valley.
$29 to $37 an hour.
Yeah, and
Wow.
that's just here.
Wow.
You look out close to us, some of our neighboring locals in the plumbers and pipe fitters, they're in the mid $40 range. You go as far as out west, it's $100 an hour in California. But naturally, the cost of living is more. Same way with Chicago, Boston.
Right. I appreciate that. I mean, and that's good to know, because a lot of us who might not be college material or think we're college material, or can't afford or feel we can't afford to go years without working and making a decent wage, at least something that would be a starter wage, to get trained while you're being paid and to get work experience. And I can tell you all from experience, one of the biggest issues that still plagues the job market is this idea that you're supposed to have experience that jobs ask for that you don't actually have. And, you know, you're coming out of college for that, and then those job applications are still saying need 2 years experience and this, that, and the other. I've watched so many people go through that. So to be within the track of your trade, to be a part of a hiring hall or an organization that's going to place you and get you somewhere is a great path that more of our men and women, young men, young women, maybe some who are a little older who need to transition, need to really take a strong look at.
Definitely.
Because it encompasses a lot of the pieces you normally have to kind of go get yourself. It's all self-contained.
I'm not going to knock, I have no knock against college or anything like that, but I have paid college tuition, not for myself, but for a child. But the one thing about the trades, learning through the trades, at least the union trades, is that they're debt-free. You'll get your 4 to 5.
Say that again.
You're debt-free after your 4 or 5 years. It costs you $0 to learn the trade. Now, when you join a union organization, naturally you're going to have some dues and costs associated. But to be able to start your career as a journey person and not have $50,000 to $80,000 hanging over your head that you have to pay back means a heck of a lot. And that's one of the most important things about trying to get into a certified state apprenticeship program.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And we're going to come back with some more questions. But I want to talk to our 2 brothers who've joined us, and they're both shift leaders at Ultium Cells, the new plant out in Lordstown. And I'm going to start with Vernon. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and just where you're from and what you do out at Ultium Cells, and just a little bit about the plant out there and the company that you think that the public might like to know.
Well, thanks a lot for having me, Pastor. My name is Vernon Mills. As you mentioned, I am a cell assembly shift lead here at Ultium. Started my career for General Motors about 9 years ago at the Lordstown facility, so very excited to be back home. You mentioned before when jobs leave, what that can do to someone's emotion, especially their psyche. I have my 2 beautiful children here with me today, so members of the church, please, if you hear my daughter, please don't hold that against me. But yeah, coming back for this joint venture, which is a joint venture between General Motors and LG Energy Solutions. So we're combining expertise in the electrochemical field as well as the manufacturing sector with General Motors, and we're going to create over 1,100 jobs right here in the Valley. So I mentioned that that feeling when the jobs left, and knowing that we had that end of the shelf life, building the Chevy Cruze was something I can't put words to, because I ended up going to Toledo Transmissions for 2 years and separating from my family. So I did what we call the weekend warrior thing, which is definitely not a natural way to raise a family. So I can't explain to you guys how excited I was, because I know the future is electric, and that future is now. So not only is it 1,100 jobs, but this is a $2.3 billion venture between these two powerhouse companies. And like you mentioned, you've driven past it, and for those of you who are in attendance today, that facility is massive. It's right now to be the largest battery cell manufacturing plant that we will build. I know we've already announced 2 locations in Lansing and the other location in Spring Hill. So this is a competition in a lot of ways. Ford is going to be releasing their Lightning, and we don't even have anything that will be in the market. So when I say those 1,100 jobs, those are needed. For those of you who are out there, we need you. General Motors needs you, because in order for us to facilitate that electric future, we have to get these battery cells out at a groundbreaking pace, and we're behind right now.
And you said 1,100 jobs that are available, and this is a joint venture. I want to be clear so that our I think people, and if you've grown up in the Valley, you've grown up in a generation of broken promises and wild dreams, and I'm a little young, but I'm a big reader, so I remember stuff like the car company, what was it, Avante, or and the blimp factory, and Bill Clinton saying they were gonna, I think it was like a bomb making, or they were gonna do some kind of military something here once, and so it's easy to be skeptical. It's easy to be skeptical, and I've spoken frankly and bluntly about growing up here. I'll be 40 this year, so I've been here the entire time I've been here. The Valley has been in what you'd call some sort of decline from what the greatness of what it once was, that our grandparents know about, and parents. But that does something to your psyche, and it almost lessens your motivation and lessens your believability, in things. And so this is a joint venture between GM and Ultium Cells, and this is GM backing this as their supplier. So this is not some fly-by-night out of his shed, got some of daddy's money and decided to buy a plant and try to hire people, because honestly, that's how we often think about things. And it doesn't help saying no names that we've had a couple other companies even recently just have some financial struggles that make it look like, well, it's not going to be that viable turnaround. But Ultium Cells is here for the long haul, and they're here to hire. And you'd have to be old enough to know what it's like when GM was built, which our grandparents were. And I actually saw videos on YouTube, if you look up when they were first building the Lordstown plant and hiring people and just stacking up people, and GM, Delphi, and Packard Electric ramping up, that to know what it's like to have that kind of rush for jobs. And that's why my concern is here, so that we don't miss that rush. Because to be honest, I would say, not to speak for you, if the jobs don't come from here, they're going to come from somewhere. If that makes sense. If they don't come from within the community, they're going to come from somewhere. And so can you talk a little bit about our second guest, Dominick Brown? What is the job, or what are some of the primary jobs that are being hired for the bulk that the average person, maybe a person with little experience or some production or manufacturing experience, and then maybe go into the more salaried, management stuff. But just give us an idea, because I think that's an issue of what is it, what would I be doing?
Thanks, Pastor Todd. So we are challenged with recruiting people to come on our team, right? Everyone's looking for employees, And so we're in the market where we want to hire, and our HR team has visited several area high schools trying to get recruits. There's a whole program set up that will allow them to work, and we'll work around their work schedule to make sure that they're able to attend college, because one of the incentives that we are offering anyone that joins the Ultium team is tuition assistance up to $8,000 a year. And that's available to everyone, hourly or salary, that join our team. We have anywhere from production associate openings all the way up to engineers, a nurse. If you visit our website, www.ultium sales, and Ultium is spelled ULTIUM sales.com, and click on the Apply Now link, and you'll see every position that we have available. And as you know, right, electric vehicles, there's a want for them, right? And so when we originally were in the planning stages, we had a cadence of an acceleration. Well, just from the vehicles that General Motors has released, the demand is high. So now a plan that we had that stretched into Q2 of 2023, we now have to try to complete it by Q3 of 2022. So that's just a few months away. We need 500 people to join us by May, right? Because we have some goals, some targets that we have to meet.
500 people in the associate positions, which are basically like general production positions.
Yes, so production
500 people need to be hired by May.
Yes, sir.
And you're taking applications right now.
Yes.
Okay. Y'all hear that? I'm joking. Can I get mine right now? Can I get my application? These kids need college funds. Take us through a day, an associate who's hired there. First of all, and we'll talk about the hiring process a little bit of what to look for, but just let's say the person gets through and they're hired. What does it look like for them as they're coming in their first few weeks, first few months? Do they have to go away to train? Is there training on site? Are they paired? And then what are they doing when they're in the plant?
So most of us that joined in the early stages, LG has a battery facility in Holland, Michigan. And myself and Vernon both spent 9 weeks up there training. And most of the salary people that we currently have did that same amount of time. In December, we hired our first 10 hourly team members. And we've sent them up to do training as well. Now, those of us that have done the training and are currently doing the training will then train those that we bring on board from this point. We have a very robust training plan for anyone that comes on to our team because we don't want anybody left behind, right? It's easy to hire people and tell them to do a job, but you really want them to understand the dynamic of the job. And so we have a 3-week training cadence that when we bring on our team, they will get all the information that they need to be successful and grow within our company. Because just just talking, right? We're already creating more positions so that we can grow our current team into those positions, right? So this is a continual, learning for everyone, right? And opportunity is there. Vernon mentioned, we announced 2 other sites, Spring Hill, Tennessee, and Lansing, Michigan, right? So those that are mobile and willing to relocate, you have that option as well.
So if you would take, excuse me, mic's on. So Vernon, if you could take a time to talk about what type of manufacturing or industrial work is being had. Is it considered heavy industrial in the way of getting dirty and working in furnaces and all that? Is it considered light industrial? Are we working with chemicals, parts? My dad put together hiring harnesses. That's what he did. And it's funny because I said that. I could tell you what my father did. Just about every kid that had a parent that worked at Packard Electric. If you worked at Packard Electric, they did wiring harnesses and all that wiring stuff. Later he went on across the street and did the measuring and all that valuing. If you worked at GM, you built cars, paint shop or the body shop or whatever, and rolling them off the line. What is happening inside, and what are those workers going to be working with?
And Pastor, you brought up one of the most important aspects of the work that we'll be doing at Ultium. You mentioned traditional manufacturing and what some of those roles actually entailed. It entailed a lot of manual work that at the end of the day, you might have somebody who's like myself, 6'4", but when they walk out that door, they're about 6'1" because they've had to bend over and they've had to do these tedious activities that honestly, it takes that toll on your body. There's no way getting around it. one thing that someone who hires into Ultium will know right off the bat is the automation. The level of automation is out of this world. It truly is the future because in a lot of ways, all you're doing is making adjustments to the machine. The machine's doing all the work for you. The most, I would say, manual work involved in building batteries is changing out those jumbo rolls to put in the machine. Once you do that, then the machine takes over from there. And the only thing you'll be doing in a lot of sense is doing this, making the adjustments to the parameters to make sure that quality is top notch. So from someone who will be coming from a traditional manufacturing plant who's actually taking their future into Ultium, they've already mentioned how, man, I don't know how I'm going to stay awake because the job is just that easy, where before I got carpal tunnel. That was like one of the most familiar injuries that you would see in your traditional manufacturing.
Yes, yes.
And looking at that surgery and all that entailed was like, no job should send a person into that condition because they're coming to make an honest living and provide for their family. So knowing that when you leave Ultium, you'll be just as energized and ready to spend your time with your family and give that devotion to them is probably one of the most rewarding aspects of coming to Ultium and working.
I'm glad you mentioned that because my mother actually had to retire early because of carpal tunnel and injuries to her wrists. And watching that, we used to joke with her, hope you're not watching, Mom. And we'd go out to the park or the go-karts were our thing because my dad's a car guy. And Mom would participate. We'd say, we hope there's not a workers' comp person in the trees. watch to see you have too much fun, play with your kids, send you back. But I'm glad you mentioned that. I want to talk to the whole panel a little bit about, and this is, we're good, a little bit about some honest talk here. We're really trying to target the African-American community. I know Ultium cells in the skilled trades areas are not only looking for African-Americans. We understand that. Everybody is welcome. There's an equal opportunity employer situation. You can equal opportunity church, by the way, so, you know. But there are barriers and there are stigmas and there are stereotypes and then there are realities that seem to sort of plague those from urban communities, black minorities, that have run into some issues with applying, pursuing these jobs. And we need to be super honest and blunt about, because we talk about what's not there without talking about what's keeping us from getting what is there. And so I'm sure you've noticed this being managers or being in the field, and I'll start with Mr. Callion. What are some of the biggest barriers to our African-American young men and ladies to pursuing these jobs, or what might interfere with their progress in these jobs?
I would say the biggest barrier would be making them aware of the opportunities. I was fortunate. I was born, I could say, into the trades because my dad was a contractor. So my whole life I was around it. It kind of turned me off from it for a while because I was tired of it. However, I find that a lot of African-American boys and girls just don't know what's out there. They don't have that exposure, and that falls on us. When I was working with the local, we made an extra effort to try and reach out to our community, to go where the kids were. We were helpful with getting Warren's High School to get a industrial art program back in the city high school and not just the vocational schools. A lot of the other trades too have come together and started working with some of the school service agencies. And now every year, last year we couldn't do it because of COVID, but they put on a big job fair out at the Canfield Fairgrounds with all the tradesmen are there, and they set up hands-on opportunities for the kids to go through. And they can go from place to place and see what it's like to maybe do a little hands-on carpentry or plumbing and pipe fitting, electrical. They get to lay a brick, see how ductwork goes together, take a look at furnaces. So I think exposure is a big part of it. The other thing I would say is our kids have to be aware in middle school of what it takes to be able, if you do decide, you want to get into a trade. And I'm not saying it's too late, because when I got into the union trades, I was 29 years old. But because of my dad again, he had always steered me into taking a math where I would have to do algebra, geometry, industrial arts classes, drafting, and all of that kind of stuff. So we can steer our kids into some of those courses too. I know they're not always easy, but nothing worthwhile is going to be easy, you know. We have to make sure that our kids are familiar with that. I'm not saying you have to be an algebra scholar, you know, but at least know the basic parts of it, understand geometry. With the trades, you're measuring every single day, you know, and some of the tougher ones, electrical, you're going to have to understand some algebra. Plumbers and pipe fitters, you're going to need a little bit of geometry and sometimes even a little bit of trigonometry just because of what we do with the specifics of getting pipe from point A to point B, you know. So somehow we have to try and make learning fun to them and not so much a challenge.
Okay. So you said awareness and preparation, getting these young people, especially the younger ones, on that track, thinking about the trades, knowing what it may require as far as classes are concerned to kind of get their minds. And there might be people with that talent, maybe that proclivity already, but they need the right environment to push them in that direction to get there. I appreciate that, Mr. Callion. Mr. Mills, I did say Ms. Mills, Vernon Mills. Okay, I
Yep, you got it.
a lot of names to remember today. What do you see as barriers? Maybe it's something you see in applicants. Maybe you've seen something in outreach. Maybe you've sat at a hiring event and saw something like, yeah, that's not going to fly. What are you seeing that is a barrier? And I got a comment I'm going to read in a minute, but I want you to go ahead and answer on your own first, then I'm going to go from there.
Well, I think you kind of touched on, and actually what you're doing here today, that outreach and communication and actually engaging, especially the young black youth, on exactly what the benefits of this is. I know myself, you mentioned it, graduating and having debt. I fell into that traditional, I got to go to college and able to be successful. And in turn, then I'm still paying college student loans off. Mm-hmm. And I think if we develop that real mentorship to where we have those individuals with the experience going out and reaching the youth, letting them know that these are your options and this is what I did wrong. So hopefully you can learn from my lessons and see where I'm at today. Didn't take me getting that student loan and coming in debt. This is your way to navigate differently and more efficiently than I did. So I'm big on mentorship. I know I didn't have that when I was younger, so it led me down that path, and being able to talk and go to schools and talk with, to your point, even elementary students, so you're building that culture within their thoughts, because it starts, we talk about behaviors and culture. If you're waiting until they're in high school to really try to guide and direct their thoughts, it's too late. There's kids in other countries and their traditions, they start early. Mm-hmm. And there's no sense in us doing it any differently here in the U.S. and here in our communities.
Thank you. Would you like to add to that, Dominick? What are you seeing as barriers? They talked about knowledge, awareness, getting the word out. What else do you see as a barrier to in the actual job applicants themselves?
It's been plaguing the communities, right? You know, people failing to be able to pass a drug screen, right? I mean, it's a big issue, right? And we don't want to bring people on that, you know, have substance abuse issues, because then it creates issues in the workplace that can give unsafe work, right? And so we want to make sure that we have good applicants that are drug-free. You know, we want to train them. We want to give them opportunities. And I mentioned before, we've been in the community. We've had job fairs in Camel and Warren and Youngstown. We've done all this. You know, we are doing everything we can to be accessible to people. One of our team members that we just hired, he's a 23-year-old black individual, and I have a lot of respect for him. He does not drive, but he gets to work. okay? I'm going to say that again.
Say it again.
He gets to work. And because we're not fully functional in our building, we kind of have satellite offices, and he gets to work.
Wow.
He catches the bus, the WRTA bus. If we're utilizing the Bright Center downtown Warren, he catches the WRTA bus to and from work.
So you can take, so he's working at the Bright Center right now,
Well, that's one of our training sites.
but he's able to get there
Yes.
via WRTA.
Yes.
Do you know if there is public transportation at this time to your location?
So our HR team is going to be, he's been working, Christopher Allen.
Yes.
He's been working with a company that is out of Columbus, and it's going to provide transportation opportunities. They'll meet in a common location,
Yes.
and they will transport you to and from the facility.
You could have called me for that. I got 2 church vans across the street. I'm dead serious. That is not a joke. And I mean that as a partner in our community, and y'all know me. If you're watching me on Facebook, you already know I will get in the van myself. Now, I'm not going to babysit, or we're not going to enable, helpless behavior. But if we can be of any resource in that manner, maybe it takes a little bit more legalities to get stuff going with the company out of Columbus, by all means, call on us, because we don't want that to be a barrier. But I'm glad you mentioned a 23-year-old who makes it happen, because we need to make it happen. We make it. I bet you somebody from Warren with no car made it to the All-Star Weekend in Cleveland. I bet you with no car or no job made
Priorities.
it. We got to be people of priorities, and this is not a lecture. This is not a lecture from the white man or Republicans or anything. This has to be our priorities for our families, for our babies, to be independent and able to earn the monies. And so I'm glad you mentioned that, and that the fact that there may be, and some people, I worked in job services for 10 years. They assume beforehand, because they don't have transportation, there's no use in applying. And I would say what you just heard is a person who works as a shift manager at Ultium Sales saying that they have obviously made some accommodation if the worker is worthy and they see something in them and they can work something out. I can't promise on their behalf or any other employer. But before you cancel yourself out from an opportunity, apply and get the interview and talk with someone and see what's happening. We don't like to talk about drugs. I'm glad you mentioned it. That was the comment that was made, is that the narrative is that our community use of marijuana and other drugs is knocking a lot of our applicants out, and particularly black applicants. Is that a reality? And if it is, just say yeah. Is that a reality?
Yes.
Yes. And we like to say that certain substances aren't addictive and aren't on the level of harder drugs. But my saying is, if it's worth it to you to bypass a good job that you could raise your family off of, that meets the definition of addiction to me. If you're willing to pass up a good-paying job and slink from here to there and mold your life around doing what you want to do with who you want to do it with, that's no different than the person who you think is lower than you dumpster diving or selling their body or whatever, because you're abusing your future just as much as anybody else. And that obviously applies to the trades as well. They do drug testing. These are dangerous jobs. These are high-level equipment. Talk about the effect of drug use and drug testing for those that might pursue trades.
Drug use in the trades, a person could easily lose their life. I recall an incident prior to us implementing drug testing, and I was working with the guy, and he went to lunch, and his lunch wasn't eating. His lunch was something else. And we were working in a high area, and our foreman saw what was going on. I was an apprentice at that time, and he said, "Get that lift down on the ground." And he separated me from this individual because we were moving around and just wasn't safe. So it is very important. That's why the trades, all of the trades do an initial drug test. And then as an apprentice, we do, at least the plumbers and pipe fitters, we had random drug tests too for the apprentices, which means that they weren't announced. You might come in the school and boom, everybody in a certain room, and we're going to drug test you. with us at that time, and it could have changed now, as I mentioned, I've been gone for 2 years, but it was one strike and you're out. If an apprentice failed a drug test, they were eliminated from our program. Every trade is different. Some might be a little more lenient, but it's just not a good thing to mix with. And I do understand sometimes people have problems where they are injured and they get on a painkiller or something, and those are situations that we have to try and work around too. I've known of several people who have gotten addicted to pain pills. So I don't know what the solution is, what the answer is for that, but the marijuana use, stuff like that, something that you just don't have to use, just doesn't work with the trades.
I appreciate you mentioning that, and that these are dangerous jobs. I mean, and maybe you can talk, any of you who would like to comment, there is legalization happening around different states, and then there is medical marijuana. We have dispensaries here in our area. How does that interact? And I've said it as an advocate, not that I'm against the demonization, especially of young black men and the drug wars and the prison and all that, but the fact of the matter is our institutions haven't changed their standards, regardless of if the government has changed their standards. And we need to understand that. So if something's legalized in a state, or there are medical marijuana dispensaries and all of this, and I don't know what the waivers look like legally with HR and all that when it's medical-based, but your colleges many times, your sports stars, your employers, they're still, for right and legal reasons, because of safety in the workplace, because of productivity, lawsuits, they haven't changed. And you might hear through the grapevine, well, they don't test for this, or they don't test for that, or they only test hair, or they only test pee, or whatever it is. But you guys haven't changed anything, regardless of what the states have changed, have you?
No, absolutely not.
So we don't want that to be a confusion point, because some people assume that because they're seeing this legally sort of change,
Right.
that, well, when I go into the job, they think they have a case, or they think it's not going to be tested, or they think only the hard stuff is going to be tested. You're still testing for marijuana and all other drugs,
Yes.
that might show up in the system.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. I want to talk a little bit about the guy that says, I applied for that job and they didn't call me back. Because people will say, I applied. Pastor, you on there talk about apply, I applied, and nobody called me back. Who is the guy that doesn't get called back? Who is the lady, the applicant? Just a few things that you see that doesn't get the call back. Maybe you see the online or the resume and the setup, or maybe you meet them in person. Who doesn't get the call back?
So we're processing a lot of applications, right? And it's a layered approach, right? So a person would apply, right? We have our HR specialists that screen the applications, right? And you also have to attach a resume. And resumes are something that many people in the black community aren't familiar with or good at doing. I've had many people reach out to me about resumes. And after I'm at work, 8, 9 hours a day, I meet up with people and help them build their resume, right? That's something that I can do if they're showing me they're interested. Hey, I'm going to help you do your resume, right? We're going to make sure that it's right and all your skills are listed, right? And, we do look at every application, every resume. We do in-person interviews as well, and we have a very diverse team doing that as well, right? So it's just not always me doing the interviews or Vernon. We get our supervisors engaged in it and try to make sure we're picking people that we know will be productive, because and also coming to work, right? Absenteeism is
Talk about it.
It's bad in the
Absenteeism.
it's
Somebody
bad.
called off for All-Star Weekend. Absenteeism. And it's a joke these days with younger generations. I mean, to be honest, I never imagined. I had some mostly office jobs, and it was very lenient and PTO, paid time off, personal time off. But the idea that people walk into jobs already thinking about the time they're going to take off before they start. Or they ain't going to tell me I'm not going to take when I want off. I mean, let's talk about, we're all black men up here, so we're not judged, but we're being real about this. Talk about absenteeism and how management and people view that when they see that as a problem. Vernon, go ahead and talk about that. I see you chomping at it.
Well, me and Dominick both can relate to this issue. It's affected, I know, our corporation at General Motors greatly. One of probably the biggest aspect of not meeting production is directly correlated to absenteeism and lack of people available to do their specific role and responsibility. So Dominick mentioned we visited the LG plant in Holland, Michigan, and that's where we received the in-person on-the-job training. I've witnessed multiple days in that location where they've shut machinery down and halted their production due to people not coming to work. So the turnover rate is one of the things that is definitely at an all-time high. That, along with the fact that people just don't come to work, it has massive losses to manufacturing and production. It's one of those things where Dominick is probably even more passionate than me, because he's experienced it a little bit longer, being that he's worked at General Motors a few years before me. But man, when you see people not coming to work and it's not for a real reason, we all have reasons why we miss work that are relevant. That, hey, you got a family. I understand that that's your first priority, so you not coming to work because you have an illness where you're prioritizing around that is something that I'm willing to work with somebody about. But to your point, when you have individuals who are taking off to go to All-Star Weekend, and then they run out of that PTO because they've used it for instances that don't matter, now don't come to me when you have a situation that does matter and you want me to work with you. Unfortunately, that thing called karma, it has a way of finding everybody. And when you do that, karma will find you.
Mr. Callion, would you talk a little bit about absenteeism and the expectations? Because they are tough from these hiring halls and these unions.
Even in the trades,
There you go. Yeah.
absenteeism is an issue. That's one of the biggest complaints from our employers. Hopefully you're not having that out there, but some of the bigger projects, especially because of the time factor, and the guys and ladies are working a lot of hours, they get burned out. And absenteeism as the project goes on becomes an issue. But I don't know if there's a simple solution for it other than get up and go to work anyway. When it comes to the younger people, though, when it comes to an apprentice, you must go to school. You can't miss school. I went through 5 years apprenticeship, missed 1 day of school.
Wow.
That's a no-no when it comes to the apprenticeship programs. You have to be there, and that's what makes your company money. That's what puts money in your own pocket. I mentioned earlier about some of the benefits that we have and getting the most of our benefits. If we're not there, we're missing hours to our pensions.
Yeah.
We're missing hours to our health and welfare fund. We're missing hours to our 401k. Eventually, you're going to retire. And after you've worked 30, 35 years, you look at what your retirement is, and if it isn't what you thought it should be, and it's your fault because you didn't go to work every day, that's sad. You could have given your family a lot better benefits simply by showing up.
I appreciate you saying that, because that people don't understand. These accumulations of hours and work hours is not just about that paycheck that week or those 2 weeks. That's your seniority. That can be, depending on the job, it can be attached to your pension and what's counted and all this time off. And hiding behind, which is a stigma, but it's true, hiding behind union or advocacy that you have that is supposed to be for good reason.
Yeah.
And you're using that and exploiting that.
Right.
And then, just to be honest, giving union laborers a bad name.
Right.
And unions a bad name, because now what should be helping us to have fair working conditions and living wages becomes, unfortunately, a lot of people taking advantage of that, and it looks like we're just protecting bad workers.
Right. And that's not what we're supposed to be about.
Right.
One other thing I'd like to mention, Pastor, you talked about what that person that doesn't get hired. In our system, you're applying for an apprenticeship program, you're usually interviewed by a JATC committee. And I found that some of the people aren't selected because they lack soft skills. By soft skills, I mean knowing how to present yourself in front of people. Our interviews take place in front of maybe 6 to 7 people, and you have to know how to answer the questions that are asked, pretty much knowing what to say and what not to say. Your appearance when you go to that interview.
Talk about appearance.
That means a lot, you know. Being on time. I'm from the old school. If I'm on time, I'm going to be at least 15 minutes early, not at the time I'm supposed to start. That plays an important role. Those are things that can be taught, and there are programs out there to help develop better soft skills with kids that are in high school. And I know there's a training center right down the street here in Warren that moved in here, and they do that there too.
Yes.
I don't
Yes,
wanna know
Flying
if you
High.
want-
Yeah,
Flying
Flying
High. I
High.
didn't know.
They did it down at the Ohio Means Job. I did it personally.
Okay.
I developed a young adult career workshop and soft skills workshop when I was working for the state from 06 to 2016, and it went statewide. I think they're still passing out DVDs. I wish they just hired me back and I could put some more. But to our young black men and ladies, and let's get real personal. Let's get real down to the personal urban community. The standards that we allow for in our homes, and in our communities, and in our schools is going to end up making our young people unemployable later on. Not having to address people properly, not respecting authority, not knowing how to look people in the eye, not being able to take criticism without blowing up, not being able to be told you're wrong, not being able to accept that sometimes that manager or that leader or that authority figure is kind of wrong, but you need to let it go and live to fight another day and not try to make a Jesse Jackson moment out of it and cuss everybody out and do all this stuff.
Right.
Like this equalizing of children and parents and young people and, you know, I'm just as grown. No, you're really not, because I'm not any grown than my elders. I'm a pastor, and there are pastors. I'm like, yes, sir. No, sir. Do you want me to get you some water? Okay. And it's not because I'm somebody's slave or punk. It's because I have basic respect. And I understand that one day I'll be that guy, and I hope that somebody treats me with respect, and that's the only way you can have anything that functions. And so the product, I see it in sports, kids' sports. I see it in the classrooms. We see it with parenting, and we have this don't judge me mentality. But a lot of us have these standards because we know how the world works outside of our bubbles. And I'm looking dead at the camera. We know how the world works outside of our bubbles. So whatever mom put up with their dad or auntie or the teachers just roll their eyes and let you slide through, that will not work when money's on the line and profits being lost and you're putting a company in danger or making them liable. And so we have to be honest about that. It does not make you a slave. It doesn't make you, you know, it doesn't make you subservient to be a respectful person. The amount of young black men I know that don't know how to look another man in the eye and shake their hand and have their head in the floor. Because I did this for 10 years, interviewing and trying to prep them. And I'm like, what are you looking at? I am up here. But there are a lot of issues, and then we have to gather our young men and try to teach them. But I'll be devil's advocate and say, you've got to be willing to be taught. You've got to put yourself. We have 2 black men. I'll just say that. Put them on the screen, London. We have 2 black men who are hiring managers at Ultium Sales. I'm sure they want to give every young black man that wants to work a chance. And I'm not saying that in a racial way. I'm just sure they do. But they can't do your job for you and be you for you. We have a man here who's worked in trades and would love to advocate for any man or young woman that would like to work. And we don't want to leave our females out at all, because all of these jobs are for males and females and not just for males.
True.
But we can't give you respect, give you drive, give you motivation, and we can't always overcome the barriers you create by not being a good worker. And they're certainly not going to put their jobs on the line to, you know, defend somebody who doesn't care much about their own job. And I'm just saying that as in a preachy tone because it's real and it's true. And I want to see these things done better. I want to speak to that resume situation, transportation situation, soft skill situation. I put on Facebook probably about 2-3 months ago, before 2022. We have a sister in our church who does resumes. All she does, resumes. And I offered to pay her. I said, I'll find 10 young men who need a resume, and we'll just pay you from the church. I'll pay you myself. And we'll get them resumes. Couldn't get one response. Wow. I'm not making this up. I couldn't get one response. And here's what I see a lot, and I'm just being honest because I'm saying what they can't say. Mamas and aunties and grandmamas can't apply for jobs for you and can't look into opportunities for you. Because if I put something online or whatever, and I know brothers don't do this stuff, and men don't do this stuff as much as females do. But they can tag you and say, I'm going to send my grandson, or I'm going to send my son or my nephew or my spouse or my boyfriend or whatever. But brother and sisters, you got to want it for yourself. You got to want it for yourself. And I know the offer still stands. I know that Courtney will do it. I had about 3 or 4 people. I had more people reach out to me and say, I'll help make resumes than people who said, I need a resume and I'm going to send my information or give me that email. And I said, I'll pay the lady to do it for you. Wow. So these exist. So let's rewind for those of you that just joined us. Now I'm here with Tim Callion. He's worked in pipe fitting. You all know him. He's worked in the unions and trades and skilled trades, and he's trying to recruit young African-American men and women. And I'm sure we all know it's not just African-American, but for Black History Month, we're focusing on that. And we want to see more of our young people get into these good-paying jobs that can be lifelong careers and feed their families. I'm here with Vernon Mills and Dominick Brown, who are shift managers at Ultium Sales that need to hire 500 workers starting around $16 an hour for basic associates, $16.50 an hour with benefits that start on day one. Y'all hearing this? Benefits that start on day one. I was 90-day, 1 year for some benefits when I worked for the state. And they want to make every opportunity available, but we have to take advantage of them. And so I just want to close out. If you have any questions, because we're coming to the end, we got places to go and people to see. If you have any questions, I'm looking. I don't have my screen set up. I made a mistake, but I can read them here. Just want to ask a few questions that were asked. You talked about dress. In a manufacturing environment, what does a person wear to work at Ultium Sales? And what should a person wear if they're presenting themselves to get a job at Ultium Sales? Now, I'll just say, we used to always say, dress one step up if you know what the job is. If it's a button up, then put a tie on, but you ain't got to put on your tuxedo. What do they wear to work every day at Ultium Sales?
It's no dress code once you get the job, right? And we do provide 5 shirts to our new team members. So I have one on. It says Ultium Sales logo. Vernon has one on. Different styles, right? But I'll just say that, if you come to an interview, dress like you want the job, right?
Dress like you want the job.
And just to even go back a little bit, right? Our leadership always says, we don't want people to think of this as a job. We want them to think of it as a career, right? And we're giving you all the opportunity to make it a career, tuition assistance, opportunities with promotions within the company, day one benefits, right? I mean, we are really trying to make it as accessible as possible to get people engaged and want to get back into the manufacturing realm. Vernon mentioned, this isn't the olden days where, manufacturing, where you stood there, because I didn't mention this, but when I began my career with General Motors, I started as an hourly worker, standing on the line, doing 420 cars a shift, repetitious work. Opportunities presented themselves for me to grow my career, and I took that. And I don't look back on it. I've been able to continue to grow. It's good to be back home. I've lived in 4 states in 5 years, just continuing to move around and grow my career and look at opportunities to grow. And that's what we want for anyone that comes on our team. We want you to view it as a career, not a job.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You want to add to that, Vernon?
Yes, and just to follow up what Dominick said, you're almost auditioning how you present yourself, even when you get the position. Because at Ultium, I know he touched on it being a career. Not only will you be hired in, but we've already announced 2 additional facilities. So your opportunities to progress, if you excel in your current role, are pretty much endless, whether you want to do it with relocation or do it in-house. A lot of our leadership preaches that, and I know they're very well committed to progressing and hiring from within. We've hired production associates who we kind of identified as possible supervisors, but because we had to put that position on hold, we kind of put them on the back burner, but now we're opening up more positions in the supervisor realm to where we're going to re-audition those guys in that field and say, hey, you did good, so we want to continue to pursue you in this role as a supervisor as opposed to what you were hired in as production associate. So how you present yourself is key. Not only when you do the interview, but also when you get the job. Because if you want that next role, I know you said dress a step up. Well, if you're dressing to step up, people are going to talk and say that guy is well dressed. The way he handles himself is very respectful and professional. He might be good fit for another role. So it's key.
That's how I got this church. That's how I became the pastor. I just showed it with a robe on. He looks like a pastor. Mr. Callion, would you like to give us some parting thoughts about what our young men and young ladies should look to do if they might be interested in trades? And you'd already talked about what they can expect, but just a few words of wisdom that you think you could share.
I would say if a person has an interest, if you know what specific trade you are interested in, reach out to that union, reach out to that trade. I'm going to leave some information with Pastor here, and he'll have email addresses, telephone numbers you can call. But it doesn't hurt to put effort forth yourself. Call them up, let them know who you are. Ask if you could come down and tour their union hall or their training facility. We used to give tours all the time, and some of those people that came wound up being apprentices in our program. You have to be able to assert yourself, even though some of you might be young, but it's never too early. And we keep saying young, but there really are no age requirements when it comes to applying for an apprenticeship program. And even if there's a person out there who maybe is already in a skilled trades, but you would like a better opportunity, you'd like to maybe try the union side of it and see how it is. We can't all the times take everybody. Most of the trades have a limit as to how many apprentices that they're going to take. If you don't make it in, you apply, you don't make it in, come back next year. Or find, maybe you didn't get in because you didn't show enough experience. Find an opportunity out there where you're going to get that experience and then try a year or two later. And that helps too. I've seen several people do that. And the second time they do come in and they're hired into the apprenticeship program. So don't give up. If you want something, you're going to try. You got to have the initiative. First time you were interested in another person and that person turned you down. Most times you didn't take no for the answer that first time. You asked again, So that's how it is with everything in life.
Don't be like Kanye. Stalk.
Yeah.
Don't be like Yeezy.
Don't be a stalker.
Don't be a stalker. Don't sue me, Ye. No, don't sue me. I appreciate all three of you being here. I know that we have other things that we need to do, and honestly, nobody wants to just sit and talk about. My main focus is to get young men and women, and even those who are transitioning into these careers, because working people uplift a community. My dad used to say, even as a pastor, my father's a pastor, working people are giving people, and many of the things that we lack in our community comes because we have allowed that employment base to drop. And so I don't care if it's the nonprofit looking for donations. I don't care if it's the local leagues that need sponsors. When you don't have people working, you don't have a viable community.
True. Point
Blank, period. You don't have a viable community, and you don't have stable families. And as a black community, as a black church and a black pastor, I take it personally that I can't just say it to the few people that come into this church. I have to spread that message even beyond people who don't believe what I believe or aren't walking the walk I think. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing to me is uplifting all of our people in our community. As a councilman, our entire city, black, white, young, old, east, west. And we want to make these available. So we have job opportunities. You can go to Ultium Cell. It's Ultium Cell, no S, right? .com. Ultium Cells. It's with an L. Okay. UltiumCells.com is where you can apply. If you scroll down a little bit, it says join the team today or apply today. You can apply, and there's a full list of jobs, and they are hiring right now. About how many people are you looking to hire a week or per month to get to that goal?
So it'll be 40 people a week. 120 a month, and we'll have that cadence through March, right? Actually, starting in March, and we'll have that cadence until we get that number of desired individuals. So if you stand in the line for a pair of Jordans, and you're not willing to do this for a career, not a job, a career, then shame on you when you got to look yourself in the mirror and your belly's growling because you're hungry and you weren't willing to go out there and work for it.
Right.
And just to add one more thing, right? Experience isn't required. Just a willingness to learn is all you need. We'll train you to the job.
So no experience required.
No experience required.
I'm going to be posting this up 100 times, brother.
For those hourly positions.
For those hourly
now.
positions, right. I understand.
Salary, you need to have an engineering degree for that, or, the nursing position that's posted, you should be on our end. But as far as an entry-level position, no experience is required. Like I mentioned before, we've been to the high schools trying to recruit. We want those individuals to join our team.
I appreciate it. And listen, to everybody watching, there are careers in the medical field. There are careers in transportation and logistics. There's careers in, accounting and banking and so many things. I focused on this today mainly because manufacturing has always been and will be the backbone of this area. This is not just going to suddenly turn into Silicon Valley overnight because people want it to. And even these new technologies still have to be built by somebody. Just because it's not combustion engines doesn't mean the cars don't need to be built. The batteries don't need to be built, the components. And so that's why I focused on this, and we'll talk other types of careers some other time. Mr. Callion allowed me to take a look at these career guides for building trades for 2021. I'm sure they're just as relevant for 2022 with all of the locals listed on the back, phone numbers. I know there's a website. I'll find it and share it and make sure that the information gets out. Now, your job is to make sure we share this, tag people, push people, pull that young man or young lady out the basement and tell them there's no more free meals. They got to start paying rent. Start talking. I talk to my members, my young members. What are you doing with yourself? Job, college, military, trade, something. The streets are not an option. And I think we just have to make that clear. One of our workers, I got one of my deacons here, he worked for First Energy for years, and he would often come in and say, we're looking for line workers. They're training. They're paying big money. And so we don't have to sit here and live in poverty and be helpless. We can build lives for our families. And is it easy? No. Do you have to budget? Yes. Will you have to sacrifice? Yes. But it's worth it. And so I appreciate you, brothers, and I applaud you and thank you for what you do. Mr. Callion, you've always been a stalwart for us. To these younger brothers, you're around my generation, and it just does my heart good to see you doing what you're doing and knowing that for some of those workers who may be of color, they'll walk in and see faces like yours, and that they might not have an instant ally just because you're black, but they at least have familiarity that somebody doing what I would like to do is already in those positions, and that's inspiring to me. So for those of you watching, please make sure you like and share. We are live on Facebook and YouTube today. Last time I did an upload on YouTube, but we're live on YouTube. So make sure you like, share, tag. Make sure somebody catches the replay. Someone can stop by the church, inbox me. Be quiet, Siri. Inbox me. I know I'm going to get a slew of inboxes after this. All I have to say is if you're interested, make sure you're ready to follow through. Because I'm going to push you in somebody's direction. If you don't have a resume, you have a child, a niece, a nephew, a spouse that needs a resume, and you inbox me or somebody, we're going to ask you to follow through, and you got to do your part. As a church, I just want to say Second Baptist is here to help however we can. I don't care if it's job fair. I was serious about the transportation thing. If I need to gather 3 or 4 or 5 resume writers and figure out a way we can compensate them for people who don't have resumes, we'll try our very best. If young men need khakis and young ladies need pants to wear, we can get them some shoes. We've done that. We don't publicize everything, but we've done that. We've literally said, I got a brother that needs work boots. Somebody's at Burlington or at the store at Carhartt or somewhere getting them what they need because we believe that the community is our first ministry. And so if there's any way we can help, your management already knows that. We want to be partners because the success of Ultium Cells is the success of our community. The success of the skilled trades and more workers coming from here is the success of our community, and we want to see that. So to all of you watching, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching all 3 weeks, and please do something to help uplift our community and better the lives of others. Until next time, I'm Pastor Todd Johnson from Second Baptist Church with our Black History Month Empowerment Series. God bless you and have a great weekend. Come to church tomorrow, 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. I'll see you. Take care.